now that we had a look at the at some of these things before, more or less following my links or click stream. Now I've prepared a few things where we can look in more detail. So here is a topic curation page, Street Child, and from there you see basically a number of author name strings sorted by some score, and they link to the author disambiguator. And so what that does is it basically allows us to, yeah, I'm not authorized here, but because on this machine I don't do wiki stuff, but you know how the author disambiguator works. So in principle, if there is a string Eric Rice that appears on multiple papers, some of which are relevant to this particular topic, street kids, then this tool can help you disambiguate those papers. And then after a while, this Eric Rice, the one that publishes on street children, can be disambiguated from other Eric Rice people that work on different topics, and so on. And the page here also links to other pages that help with curation. So for instance, you can have a look at recent changes that link to Street Child, or recent changes to things that are linked from the item about Street Child. And that gives you an idea about who else is working on this topic, or who else is vandalizing it, things like that, or who else is like mentioning it in property proposals, those kind of things. Yeah. Then another example is here the author curation. So here we have an author. Yeah, in the previous example, there were no things to disambiguate that I had shown from the Zika, but here we have several examples, and if I were logged in, I could go in and resolve those. Since I suppose most of you will be logged in on your machines, you can play around with those. There are some problems here actually with names that are just given by initials. That is not specific to Scholia, but yeah, Scholia can surface them, and there are ways in which you can deal with them. Basically, you could try to resolve some co-authors that are known by their names, like more complete names and so on, before you tackle those that are only known by initials. Yeah, then yeah, citing authors is also something that is an interesting venue for or channel for curation. Yeah, and here this one is basically missing a topic. Yeah, then an interesting thing is, for instance, taxon. So here we have a bird that is profiled as a taxon, and we're looking just at the curation page for that. And here we notice that there are 4 papers that have the taxon name of this taxon, Paros Mayo, in their title, but have not been tagged as being about this bird. And so what you can do if you're logged in is you can basically run this query, and for running the query you don't need to be logged in, but I don't even know how to comment here on this machine. So you can comment out this line here, all these variable names that create the table that you saw on the curation page, and then you get basically quick statements ready data that you can paste into quick statements. And if you're logged in, you can actually run the quick statement, and that will then basically tag this work as having the main subject of this particular taxon. And then yeah, but of course you should check. Sometimes there is like a virus that is named after a certain other taxon, and there are some other edge cases in which automating this is not entirely suitable, and which is why we put this onto the manual curation page rather than building an automated workflow. And of note, this is the curation page for this topic, this bird as a taxon, but there is a similar curation page for it as a topic, like which is derived from those papers that already have this species indicated as their main subject. And there you can do the same thing. Yeah, so there's this author name string and so on. You've seen some of this before. Okay, some other thing. So we can do the same for organization. So University of Nairobi. There are a number of authors or names that are associated with the university, and we can try to disambiguate them. And again, we can also look at some of the known people that are known to be associated with the institution, and then looking at name strings that are commonly associated with them, with or without initials. These are different workflows because, yeah, the initials, they make a big difference in terms of your chances of disambiguating the authors. Okay. Then these were all kind of Scholia-centric perspectives on curation. Now we will start from a different angle, and basically think of the kinds of things that can go wrong or that are opportunities or even needs for curation. And some of that is if the data is actually wrong. So here we have an example. We have clinical trials, like lots of them, and we see that some of them start in about 80 years, and they're linked here. And if you click on that and you check it, you notice basically, yeah, those data, they come from the original source data. So someone made an error somewhere in the source database from which we've imported this. And then the question is, okay, how do we handle that? Yeah, so simply looking at this kind of profile exposes some errors. Then there are cases where, for instance, there's the wrong ORCID ID, like ORCID is an identifier for all researchers, and sometimes a paper associates a particular ORCID with the wrong research. And this actually happens frequently. And so if we're building automated tools based on ORCIDs, assuming that the ORCID always points to the correct person, then we will just contribute to a considerable mismatch between actual publications and the people involved. I have some GitHub tickets for this, and I don't plan to show GitHub tickets here in this session. Similar thing for DOIs. So there, Wikidata knows of incorrect DOIs by the tens of thousands, and the question is, how should we deal with those? And again, how should we notify the source databases about those problems? Because they might have workflows to be notified about an individual DOI being wrong, but not about tens or hundreds of thousands that are wrong. But yeah, we have this kind of amount of problems that we notice. Then another thing is we can use citation information. Yeah, I already showed this quickly. So at the very end here on the page, yeah, so again, it all takes some time. These are live queries. The problem with citation information is it's potentially very dense, which kind of causes performance problems. And so we always have to balance between having rich enough citation information for particular purposes and then not overwhelming the system. So here, for instance, you notice that there are no citations from 2021 and 2022. But if you check in citation databases about this particular work, I thought I had put in a link. Maybe I have this open. Oh, yeah, here's a similar case. So here, if you go to some citation database, you will get, you will get hits for 2021. And in the particular on Scholia we don't have that. So that's an incompleteness problem. Inconsistency. So we have lots of way there was a dedicated session on this. We have lots of ways in which different things can be modeled, and in some cases we have let's say just plain confusion. So we have a property P228 that is for the use of something, or something uses A uses B, and then we have another property where A describes a project that uses B. And this is now like the recommended thing to use on papers, but there are still some remnants since this property is much older than this one. So some of the current use cases for this are still covered by using that. And so in Scholia profiles, we sometimes accommodate that by basically including both in the query. So if we check the underlying query here, then we will see that it actually makes use of both of them here. Yeah, this is now a German machine. Interesting. I don't normally use German interface here. But basically this one says uses and this one says describes a project that uses. So in some cases we can accommodate that on the Scholia end. In other cases, so for instance here, the subclass versus parent taxon tree structure. So for taxa, a dedicated property has been created that essentially does the same thing as subclass, but is treated slightly differently. And this also means that you can't easily switch back and forth between the two. But since the subclass tree is relatively large in Wikidata and the parent taxon tree is also very large, we can't easily accommodate this in queries, because our queries for Scholia, they are topic agnostic. And so at least most of them. And so if I'm on a topic profile or on a use profile, I can't really, and I'm, let's say, in nuclear physics, then the taxa are relatively, let's say, irrelevant. And so I don't want to, let's say, make the nuclear physics queries slower just by querying for this parent taxon tree. And so for the moment, we don't include the parent taxon tree in the subclass trees when we're looking around, which means that if you go to the Scholia profile for a genus, you might see very few publications, even though for the individual species of that genus, we have lots of publications. And so again, that's trade-off things that have to do with inconsistencies in a data model. Then there are also inconsistencies. So for instance, there are a number of cases where the markup is actually, or there's data that we get with markup here, which then can be deprecated. But even this deprecation of what is the correct title, we don't really have good data models on how to deal with that. And as you curate the data or around Scholia profiles, you will notice lots of such examples, and then you can try to tag them. But as we don't have automated workflows, it's really very tedious to tag this properly. Then, incompleteness. For the clinical trials, do we still have that open? The recent clinical trials, since we have all this future kind of thing here, that it's kind of obscuring that we're actually missing a lot of recent data. Like for the publication bots, the clinical trial bots have also been essentially inactive over the last 2 years. And that means that the clinical trials now, they're in need of updates. And you can see that rather easily by such simple visualizations of timelines. Something else. Latest recipients of an award. So here's an example where they give out an award typically on a yearly basis to several people. And here we have a 22 award recipient, and multiple 21 recipients. And so something's odd here. And I think actually for 22, the awards have not really been handed out, or at least not announced. And so something is odd here. Another thing is we have like images of the recipients, and yeah, if you go through them here, you will notice that the list of the images is more incomplete than the list of the awardees. So you can also use that to try to find images of relevant people and so on, or trying to find out what are the topics that the people have worked on, and so on. Yeah, so the latest recipients, and then yeah, the data in Wikidata, and that is visible in Scholia, also is kind of reflective of a number of biases. Biases that are existing in the real world or in the databases that we're using for Wikidata, but also biases in Wikidata. And so we are now on this. Let me see whether I can jump to the top of the page here. Yeah, so we're back to the Street Child, let's say, profile. And you will notice that, well, if we look at this from here, then we have largely countries that are not the most prominent in street children, I would say. A few of those where it is a larger problem are these here, but basically most of the countries where street children are the real problem, they're missing from this. And that is due to let's say, the scholarly literature biased towards rich countries doing lots of research and publishing a lot about it. And then also to, let's say, researchers in certain countries being less prominently visible in the wiki ecosystem. And then, which means if the people are not visible or the institutions are not visible, then it's harder to link the papers to the people and build this citation graph here. And so this citation graph for a topic level is kind of a summary of the current state of curation, and it often also highlights certain biases. So yeah, these were the things that I wanted to go through. And then I also, of course, wanted to demo some of those workflows, make some of those edits. But yeah, I guess most people here know how to use the author disambiguator or quick statements, so maybe I don't need to demo that. And so maybe we can switch to a discussion. And I could start with this first question here, which is actually something that came out of the curation of some Scolio profiles. So let me see. I tried to, while you were saying you were starting the recording, I was trying to find the Scolio profile that was at the start of this. I did that on the other computer. Yeah, okay. So and right now I'm forgetting the name. So it was about natural products, and there is a person that has basically described a lot of natural products. Maybe the person who asked the question knows what I'm talking about. And there was a lot of these. And basically, in the Scholia profile, we saw that this author had kind of published, what was it, 600 papers or so in roughly one day. And that is unusual. So I looked a bit deeper into this, and it turns out that it wasn't actually that those papers were published in one day. It was that they were all uploaded to Crossref or indexed in Crossref on that day. And on that basis, it popped out that actually there is a problem with one of the tools that is used to create items on Wikidata or to curate publication-related items, and this has given rise to this GitHub ticket here. Yeah, and so just looking at some of those profile pages really makes you aware of those kinds of problems. And since we have this large variety of profiles, roughly 30 different profile types, I've shown only like 5. We also have profile types for genes and pathways and things like that. So we have this variety of profiles, and we have this, the millions of entities that can be profiled, there's lots of different perspectives on these different aspects of data quality, like inconsistencies, incompleteness, or lack of recent updates or biases and things like that. Okay, maybe that's all I should say on this. I will try to find out that particular Scolio profile again. I think it is still visible there that this person published 600 papers in a day or in a very short period. It's clear that this can't be the case. So when viewing author pages, Scholia doesn't show author name strings alongside authors for publications. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can give an example, or I can just jump on an example. So we can just scroll up here and pick the first. Are you talking about author pages or what was it? Author pages or paper pages?
It was author pages.
Okay, so I'll pick an author here. Here, and Masten, and here, so list of publications. I guess you're talking about this authors column here. Yeah, in this authors column, we only list the authors that have actually been identified. So you can click on them, and you can see either the profile for that particular author, or in this case here, a comparison profile for multiple authors, which links to the profiles of the individual authors. We can't do that with strings, although we're actually considering to have a string profile, because for some of the things we could just have a /string thing, and then we could list all the papers that contain this string, or all the papers that have this string as indicated as an author name, or that where all the organizations that contain this string or whatever. But so far this this doesn't exist yet. So for the moment on the author pages, we only link to those things that we know, because these people have been identified, these authors have been identified, and the rest is just not visible, which basically means if you know that this paper has multiple authors, then there is more opportunity for curation, and we can actually check it. So here, let's have a look at this paper. So here only one author is listed. And yeah, here also just one author is listed. But if in some cases there are papers where, not sure, maybe this is an area where people actually write single author papers. In areas where I do research, single author papers are very rare. And so, yeah, here's another example. So on the work profiles, we typically distinguish, if it's a real author, we link to the item about the author, and if it's just an author name string, then again we link to the author disambiguator, which I can't access now because I'm not logged in. And so basically here we point out that there is an opportunity to curate, and otherwise, if there is already curated information, we expose this. And also, for instance, we use the knowledge about other papers to compute the academic age. So if this one says 0, then it basically means that this is the first paper, or this paper here came out in the year when they published their first paper. But for this one, it means that Wikidata knows of a paper that is 38 years older than the current one. Okay, let's go back to the pad. I could paste in this example here to this discussion. This one, and what was it? This paper here. Yeah. Okay. Then I'll just jump to the next question. Do you think Scholia might be able to compete with Google Scholar problems in the future for publication statistics? probably not in the simple sense of the competition for several reasons. First, the other services, they are largely automated, and so they don't have these, let's say, update problems as Wikidata. In Wikidata, there's a lot of manual curation included, and also the bots. Yeah, we have basically stopped the bots related to publications like for the last 2 years, and so that's one thing. Second, lots of the things that Scholia offers, the others don't have. And so again, it's not a real competition if it's not offering the same services. In particular, that includes some of the other profile types. Like, for instance, you can't get an event profile or an award profile from any of the others, or a gene profile or things like that, or a taxon profile. But it also includes the ability to actually fix an error. If you notice an error in any of the other databases, and there are many in there, in part because they do it entirely automatically, and the heuristics are never perfect. So if you notice an error there, you can try to write to them, and if you're lucky, they might actually change some of this like 6 months down the line. But in Wikidata, if you notice an error, you can essentially fix it on the spot. And you can also, if there's an area that you actually care about, then you can really curate that in detail, whereas for the others, you might want to contribute, and there are some channels through which you can contribute, but whether they use that curated information from you or not, it's up to them, not up to you. And also, your curation efforts into those services actually go just into those services. They cannot be reused. The curation efforts in Wikidata, they can be reused by the others, and I suspect that to some extent they are being reused by the others, but I have no let's say, indication to the extent that this actually happens. But the other way around does not work. So curating directly in those other systems also always means curating in a silo, and that's not open data. Nobody can reuse this. And so that's maybe the biggest difference. Then there's also the multilinguality. So the other services, they provide limited support for multiple languages. Also, Scholia right now provides limited support, but at least for some of the bubble graphs, you've seen that it just provides the native Wikidata multilingual kind of thing. And we have experimented with making the Scholia interface also more multilingual, but that is a very big task and not easy to accomplish. So for the moment, the text around the visualizations is English only. Yeah, I don't see further comments here, so I'll jump to the next question. Follow-up question. How about authors updating their own publications, which some other sites do allow? Is that allowed, encouraged within Wikidata? I would say it is certainly allowed, and I would also say we should encourage it. Because, yeah, what could go wrong? People might bring in, let's say, publications that do not meet notability criteria of Wikidata. That's possible, but that hasn't been much of the case yet. So as long as the publication was published in, let's say, a scholarly journal or in a book that was published by a scholarly publisher, those kind of things, it meets the notability criteria. And ideally, you should bring in the publication items, or you should create publication items when you have an idea on how you're going to use them. So, for instance, it is cited from another publication item, or ideally you would use it to support a particular statement, like this gene interacts with that gene, or that taxon is found as is being invasive in that island or whatever. In those cases, you want to back these kind of statements up with some resource, and if that's a paper, then and the paper is not in Wikidata yet, then it's perfectly fine to import that paper. And so if someone is Wikidata notable, and they have authored some papers, and Wikidata only knows a subset of those, then why not make that profile more complete? So I think, in general, yes, we should encourage that. There's an additional notion to this, and that is actually people that are also Wikipedia notable, if they don't have a Wikipedia article yet, but already a carefully detailed Scholia profile, it makes it much easier to actually write that Wikipedia article, because the Scholia profile already has a lot of information about that person. So you basically just need to phrase out some of the visualizations. That starts with things like who was the doctoral supervisor, what are the topics that the person is actually working on, what are the institutions where they have been affiliated, and so on, and or who is citing them, and things like that. And so a Scholia profile can really be a rich source of writing Wikipedia articles. And so I would say that's another reason why we should encourage that, as long as the data fits into Wikidata. But I really haven't seen much problems with that. There's more problems with people who are associated with like businesses or with some band or so who set up profiles, but scientists so far have not been too active in this space. Okay, I also see we have here the key takeaways and outcomes and the next steps, and we have like not much time left, so yeah, I would encourage you to come up with further questions or comments, and if that's not the case in the course of the few minutes that remain here, then I guess you know how to reach me. My username is my real name, and I'm also easily findable on elsewhere on the web. And Scholia also has these two wiki representations that I mentioned at the beginning here in lines 15 and 16, and we're also on Twitter, we're on GitHub where the source code sits, and so on. Another thing that I mentioned while browsing these profiles, of course, we also notice things that can be improved in Scholia, and so we have about 1,000 open tickets, which mean that things that we've noticed that could be done better in Scholia, and you're all welcome to join us in doing that. Because that's another difference to the other, let's say, services. Here, the user community can actually decide what the tool should focus on, or how the tool should be developed. If you're using Scholia on a regular basis and you have ideas on how it could be made better, or if you think that your use cases are not well supported, well, let us know, or best even supply us with a patch, and then you will get it. You can try that with the other services, but it's almost impossible. So, yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for the presentation. If people have more questions, they can indeed reach out to you.